Today, let's make a large poofy dress to celebrate 1,000 subscribers. Welcome, I do sewing and DIY related content, and today's video is to celebrate 1,000 subscribers. It's a little party. I am going to be trying to make a large poofy dress. So I draped this tulle and I put it as a YouTube short and asked for your opinion if you think I should turn it into a full dress, and a lot of people said yes. So that's what I'm going to try to do, is turn this into a large dress, all tulle. The main thing that I want to get across with this dress is I want to use supplies I already have on hand, use projects that I'm not going to wear anymore. I really want it to be a sustainable look and to see how big I can make it, how large it can go, really over the top. So the first step was I decided to start draping so I could get a bodice for the underlayer of the dress. So tulle is see-through, so I needed to make sure that it had some sort of base to connect to so that it would no longer be see-through. And the way that I did this was I used an old project that I originally had, took the fabric off, and then started draping the pattern pieces for what I was going to be using for the bodice top, so that there would be both the outside as well as the lining. And both of these came from my kind of Gilded Age dress that I had done last year around this time, and I just started going through the process of sewing up the bodice. So all of this was pretty straightforward and really easy, and I realized that making this dress mock-up was going to be the fastest part of this entire process, just because of how long it took for the tulle. But here's what the bodice looks like so far. It's coming across really nice, and remember, a lot of this you won't actually even be able to see at the end, so if it looks a little messy or if anything isn't lining up exactly right, the tulle is going to be hiding it. And I already decided that I was going to be adding boning to this corset, as I didn't know how heavy the tulle would end up being on it. So as you can see right now, I have it turned right side out, so that the right side of the fabric is actually facing my mannequin. And then what I'm going to do is start draping the back so that I can have this entire corset created. And on one side, I'm just going to be adding a zipper as how I'm going to be zipping it up. And that should allow it to give it a lot more structure, and it'll be much more form-fitted, because having the zipper, it'll just be able to zip up and be the same shape as the body. I thought this was going to be a really good way to go. As you'll see at the end, I did have a little problem with the zipper and ended up changing that slightly to be some ribbon ties instead. But here's what the top looks like. I have now the front is complete, and then the back has also been sewn up. So I do need to go through and kind of trim off some of the top edges so that it all lays the same. And then I need to do the exact same thing for the lining of the corset. And as you can see here where the pins are, that's where the zipper would end up going. So everything would lay nice and neat, and that's going to fit really, really nicely. And then of course this is all going to be covered up with tulle anyways. So now it's just time to work on the lining. And with that, I did the exact same steps as I did for the front part of the bodice. And then at the top, as you can see there, I took that one big seam to sew both the front and the lining together of the bodice, and then I turned this right side out. As I was going through, I realized that I was going to have to trim a lot of this up. As you can see, the white is sort of see-through, so if the exact seam allowances aren't the same, it shows up and looks a little messy. I did know that some of this was going to be hidden because of the tulle, but I still wanted to make sure it looked nice and neat. So now I just pressed everything out so that it was laying flat, as this is the backbone that all of that tulle is going to be going on, so I wanted to make sure that it was okay. I then understitched the lining so that it would lay nice and flat. Now it was time to add the boning. So for boning, whenever I say that, I use zip ties because it's cheaper, and I have a ton on hand from different projects that my grandparents have done around the house. So I used these, and I decided where I wanted to put the boning channels. So I decided I was going to go with 4 of them. So I just pinned up where the channels would be, and I had it be like on the seams for the corset. So there was going to be 4, and then I just took that straight stitch to create the channels for all of them. So this is what it looks like. I also decided to add a little structure in the bust for this corset so that it would really stay up, and because I was really concerned with all the tulle I was going to be adding, like if it started to droop at all and it wouldn't necessarily fit well on me or on the dress form. So I did add a little support there, and then I just went ahead and inserted my boning underneath, so you can see the zip ties there, and it gave it a lot more structure. So now what it was time to do was focus on the skirt of the underdress. I originally made this a little too short, so as you're going to see later on, I do lengthen this. But again, this was all using projects that I was trying to give a new life to, so I was having to use the fabric that I had on hand, and it did work for the beginning part. So you can see that it does, covers everything that needs to be covered at the bottom, but it just makes it a little too short. So we will be going through and adding a little more fabric as we go on. This was really simple though. I did do some hemming, and then I gathered it so that it would fit along the rest of my dress form with the outfit. And then I'm going to be adding a zipper down through it. So all this is incredibly fitted right now, and there really is no stretch to either of these fabrics. So I really have to make sure that there is that zipper so that when you're putting it on, it conforms to the body and it doesn't stretch and break the seams. And what ended up happening was this dress form is slightly bigger than I am. So when I put it on, it fit, but when I zipped the zipper up on the dress form, it got a little too tight and the zipper did pop, as you'll see a little bit later on in the video. Next, I just decided to do some serging to kind of clean it up. And this is what the underneath part of our dress looks like so far. I think it's a really great base, and it should hold the tulle really well, as also providing coverage so that nothing is showing. Since the tulle is see-through, we don't want any issues. Now it was just time to figure out exactly what zipper I wanted to do along the side. I decided to go with a 22-inch zipper. That way it just went all the way down. I had a whole collection of them. I was torn between the purple and the blue. I ended up going with this blue because it did match the skirt bottom, and I knew on the top you probably wouldn't even see it that much. So I just added my zipper in, so I sewed it in, and then I did some top stitching, and this is what the zipper looked like for the one side. I thought it looked really nice and neat, and I was really happy with how it turned out, so I just repeated that for the second side, and here was the completed underneath dress form. And you can see here that it was able to zip up most of the way, so I thought that that was a good sign. It is a little tight, you know, definitely a little snug. It's fitting exactly like it needed to, but now it was time to start adding all those layers and layers of tulle. And I decided to do this with hand sewing, which was quite the process, and I feel like the cat was judging me most of the time because she wanted to play with the tulle. But I just went through and essentially pleated this tulle over and over and over again so that I would have all of this really pretty layer and this really pretty gathering, and I did this across the entire bodice. Now, as you can imagine, this took quite a bit of time to achieve. So I started off with like a nice purple, and then I would do 4 layers of that. And then once I got those 4 layers, then I added a new color in. So it was this blue, and I did 4 layers of this blue, and then after you did the 4 layers of the blue, it was going to be another color. I realized that when I was doing this, it kind of gave it like a Little Mermaid theme effect, and I know the new Little Mermaid movie is coming out, which I am excited to go see. So I feel like this dress could be like for 1,000 subscribers. It could be for the Little Mermaid movie. It could just be a giant tulle dress. Some people told me that it ended up looking kind of like a tea party. So really whatever you want it to be is what this dress ended up being. Next, the color that I added was this light green, as I thought it would give it like a really pretty touch, and it had like this cool, very calming effect. So I have 1 layer done, so now I need to do 3 more of those. And as you can see, all of that bodice work that I had done really is hidden with the tulle. You're not able to really see any of the seams, which worked out well since there were a few like imperfections I was hoping that the tulle would hide. Well, I did look online, and there were a few different ways that I probably could have added this tulle on that were not hand sewing, as I know you could use like a zigzag stitch, but I really felt that hand sewing allowed it to be the most neat, and I used this clear thread so that you wouldn't even be able to really see the stitches, and I think doing this over time really gave it that big poofy effect. So at this point I had the entire bodice complete, and it looked really fun. I was able to try it on and it fit, and I thought that it was turning out like to be exactly what I thought it was going to look like. So for the bottom, what I decided to do was, as you can see the top, all the tulles pointing up, so it's like defying gravity a little bit. And for the bottom, I wanted to do this in the opposite direction so that it was all pointing down. That way it would kind of have what I thought would be a distinct look. When you see the entire dress done, you can't tell that much, so I don't know in the end if it really mattered, but I thought it was still a fun idea to do. And then the last color was the purple, and then I'm going to add another shade of purple to the actual full bottom. Now, sewing up this gown really made me look back at all the different projects that I had worked on in the past year or so, especially when it comes to garments, as this was my first time in the past year and a half really sewing clothes. I had done a lot of stuffed animals, I had done some doll clothes, but actually sewing clothing, this was the first year or so that I've really been doing this, and it's amazing for me to see like how far I've come, everything that I've learned, and it was really fun to put all of those skills into one project. So at this point I had the entire upper portion of the dress complete. I thought it was looking really good, and this was when I realized that it needs to be a little bit longer, the underneath dress, since this tulle is see-through and you didn't want there to be any issues whatsoever if you were ever wearing this dress out. I did get my tulle skirt, and there was a video link that I'll be sure to include when I made this skirt itself. But then here is where I'm talking about with the zipper problem, is because the tulle adding that plastic thread made the bodice tighter so it doesn't fit on my dress form anymore. And when I left this overnight, the zipper popped, so the top portion of the zipper doesn't work too well. So I'm going to come up with that new like ribbon tie effect just so that it will work for this meaning, and you know, maybe one day I can go back in, try to add some additional fabric and make it so that this will fit a lot better onto the dress form, and I don't have to worry about, you know, like having this broken zipper. I can replace the zipper. I can adjust this one day in a future video. But for now, I'm going to work on making the dress a little bit longer. It did feel really weird to be cutting through my old projects that I had done, but they had just been sitting in my closet and I felt that this was such a better use for them, is to give them a new life. So as you can see here, I now had to deal with the ribbon ties for where the zipper had broke. So what I'm going to be doing is pinning these little ribbons on 3 different sections of the zipper on either side. That way I can then just tie it together. I use my sewing machine to then go over it, so as you can see where that fabric is, it's actually really flat. So using the sewing machine worked well and was a quicker way than having to like hand sew these into place. I then was able to backstitch all of them so that it'd be even more secure, since this was the only way that it was really going to be staying up for the corset. Now for the bottom, I did pin and add on some additional fabric, and this was a remnant that I got from Joann Fabrics a while ago, but the best part about it is that it's stretch. So this way it was able to kind of fit better when I was putting it on, and I didn't have to worry about the seams popping or making sure it was exactly fitted how I needed it. This would just stretch over your body, so when I put it on, I wasn't going to have to worry about any more zipper issues. So this is what the dress currently looks like. You can see it looks really, really funny right now, but it is much more secure with the ribbons on the sides, as well as being much more appropriate in length. So this is the fabric that I'm going to be using for the rest of the dress itself. So I'm just going to be layering this over and over and over again. At first I thought I was going to do like 12 or 14 layers, but I did not have enough of this material. So basically it's just going to be 2 layers, and then I'm going to be doing this 4 times. I did cut it up so that they are varying lengths, so it goes from like shorter to longer to give it kind of this nice fun waterfalling effect, and I'm hoping that it will work out. Looking back on this, I do wish that I'd maybe stuck with the same color scheme. So instead of going with all cool colors, I wish that maybe I just done like all purples or all blues, as I think it got a little bit messy and confusing looking with the different cool colors, especially since they're not exactly the same. But this was what I had on hand, and I didn't think about dyeing the fabric ahead of time. I also probably would have made this maybe so that all the fabric flows the same direction, but these are just different things that I saw in hindsight when the dress was completed. So here's what it looks like. It's really poofy. I had someone in the comments say that it was very unique, and I would agree that it is incredibly unique. But through this whole process, thank you again for 1,000 subscribers. I hope that this was entertaining to you. You learned something from it. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and tell me what other things you want to see me make. Thanks for watching.